Hello, welcome to another module of design on steroids, and today we are going to be taking typography. In case you've missed out on all the other modules, just visit my website www.ebuka.ng. Very simple, www.ebuka.ng. So in this module we are going to be taking typography. Okay, what is typography? Good, but before that, let's go to what you're going to be learning in this module. So at the end of this course, you would learn font types and their usage. That's the different font types and how you can use them. Terminologies in typography. You learn how to download and install free fonts. You'd also learn the font pairs that work, and then softwares that help you to preview fonts. That's one software I use that helps me preview fonts even before I choose a font. Good. So, what is typography? Now, this definition here is from Wikipedia. Okay, Wikipedia defines typography as the art and technique of arranging type to make written language legible, readable, and appealing when displayed. Notice again, it says legible first, readable, and then appealing when displayed. Right? Good. I know in design we want our design to be very appealing, but notice that the first set of things we first want it to be legible and readable. Okay, you want text to be legible, readable, meaningful, then appealing. Okay, so what this means is we always prioritize function over aesthetics. Okay, so now typography is the art and technique of arranging type. When you say type, same thing, you mean text. Okay, good. Now efficient typography follows the same principles as the principle of design. Okay, because typography principles also are the same principles as the principle of design: contrast, alignment, hierarchy, balance, consistency, and emphasis. Good. Now, we're going to be looking at the font types, right? The font types. There are four very popular font types, right? The first, you have the serif fonts, you have the sans serif fonts, you have the script fonts, and then you have slab serif fonts. So I'm going to take each of them one after the other. So let's start from the serif fonts. Now, the serif fonts are fonts that have this little triangle you see at the edges. Okay, some people call them a shoe, but they are known as serifs. They're like triangles. Okay, those are serif fonts. So once a font has this, you could say when we embolden, this is what it looks like, right? Once a font has this, it's known as a serif font. This is known as a serif, right? Its shape over here is known as a serif, right? So once a font has it, it's known as a serif font. So in this font, you can see that there are several serifs. You can see on the letter E, this is a serif here. On the S, this is a serif. And also there are several more serifs on this font. I didn't highlight all the serifs on this font, right? I just highlighted some of them. Okay, you could see there are several serifs here. So once you see fonts like this, these are serif fonts, right? It originates from the beginning of text, right? From the Romans, right? This is how they usually used to write. Whenever you use a serif font, it usually depicts professionalism. It's more traditional. Okay, so serif fonts usually depict professionalism. They are more traditional fonts. Okay, good, and they age back in time. Good, right? So what are the examples of serif fonts? We have Times New Roman, Trajan Pro, and Garamond. You know New Roman very well. These are fonts that are serif fonts. That means they have these little serifs at their edges. Good. So the next one we're going to be looking at is the sans serif fonts. The word sans means no, right, or without. So when you say sans serif, it doesn't have a serif. Okay, so now this is an example of a sans serif font. Okay, as you can see, if you look at this design, the text design, you can see there are no serifs around it. So this is a sans serif font, right? These fonts are more modern, right? They are more modern fonts. They are more minimalistic fonts. Okay, good. So these are more modern and recent fonts. Okay, good. Examples of sans serif fonts: you have Arial, you have Helvetica, and you have Century Gothic. Okay, these are sans serif fonts. Good. Also, you have what we call the slab serif fonts. Now, slab serif fonts are similar with the serif fonts, just that the serif for the slab serif font is more like a block. Okay, the shape is more like a block, right? So you can see it here. This is entirely different from the serif fonts, right? This is what it looks like here. This is a block form, right? It's known as a slab serif font. Okay, it's known as a slab serif font. You can see that also in all the other characters. You see that slab at their edges, right? Now, slab serif fonts they appear more authoritative, right? They appear more authoritative, very bold. Okay, so those are some of the features that a slab serif font depicts. Okay, good. Now, what are the examples of slab serif fonts? We have Rockwell, GeoSlab 703, Lucida Fax, and Scado BC. Right, so you could check these fonts that I just listed here. Check them on your Microsoft Word or on your Photoshop. Check them to see how they appear. Okay, good. Now, the last font class we're going to be looking at is the scripts. So as the name goes, scripts, right? They appear more fluid. They appear more like human writing. Okay. So script fonts appear like your normal human writing. Okay. They are more like freestyled fonts. Okay. Good. Examples of free script fonts, you have brush scripts, papyrus, advertising scripts, and Edwardian scripts. These are all script forms. Okay. A lot of newbie designers like to use script fonts a lot, although there is where you do not use script fonts. Usually script fonts are fonts that are like sprinkles, right? You have to know when to use a script font. Okay, they are not fonts you just use to you just use throughout an entire design. No, they are fonts that you use specifically in minimal quantities. Let's put it that way, right? You could use them just to showcase a heading, right, or to showcase a word, right, or to create some contrast. Script fonts are fonts that are usually used minimalistically. Just use them a touch of script fonts and then you create elegance. If you use them so much because of their decorative nature, you make a mess of your design. Okay, good. Now, typography terminologies. Okay, now we're going to look at three terminologies: kerning, tracking, and leading. These three terminologies are very important in design: kerning, tracking, and leading. So what is kerning? Kerning is basically the spacing between individual characters in a word. So kerning has to do with a word, right? Don't get this wrong, don't miss it. Kerning has to do with a word, right? Then the individual characters in the word, the spacing between the individual characters in a word. Good. So now I want you to take a look at this E here. If you can see this E, between E and R, there is a spacing in between it. Okay, that is a kerning, right? That's a kerning. So you could increase the kerning or reduce it. Between K and E, there's a spacing in between it also. Okay, good. That is kerning. Now I'll also show you some more on kerning. Let's go over to tracking. Tracking is the spacing between groups of characters, right? Groups of characters is sometimes referred to as letter spacing. Now, while for kerning, kerning deals with individual characters. For instance, the space between T and R is a kerning. The space between R and A is a kerning. So you could reduce the kerning to just reduce the space between R and A alone. Okay, you want to reduce the space between R and A alone, you reduce the kerning. But now if you want to increase the space also, you increase the kerning. Now, but if now you want to increase the space between each of the letters here generally, right, you apply what we call a tracking. Okay, right, it uniformly spaces the words according to the amount of tracking you have given it. I'll show you the difference between them shortly. Okay, so now let's look at leading. Leading is the vertical space between two lines of text. Okay, leading is the vertical space between two lines of text. So that means in leading, there's a text above, there's a text beneath, and then the space in between them is what we call leading. Okay, some people will also refer to it as line height. Okay, that is leading. Good. So let me quickly show you the difference between tracking, kerning, and leading in Photoshop. So let's open Photoshop. So here I've opened Photoshop, right? And I'm going to click with my text tool, just select your text tool, and I'm going to click, right? So now I want to increase the size of this text to 60 so you see it clearly. Or let's make it 72. Good. So now let me type in kerning. Let's type in kerning. Good. Okay, so I want to change the text to Times New Roman. Times New Roman. You can do this with any text, okay? Let's change Times New Roman. Now, now this is kerning. Okay, you can see, like I said, kerning is the space between individual text. Okay, so as you can see here, this R and the N, they are so close to each other, right? I want to zoom that in. You can see the R and the N are very close to each other, while the E and the R, they have like some spacing in between them. So if I want to increase the space between this R and N, what I do, I click here, then you go over to your character panel. Remember your character panel, window, character, okay, window, and then you click character to get your character panel. Or alternatively, you just come over here, this A here, you just click on this A, right? Good. So now remember, we're trying to increase the kerning. Good. We have placed our cursor here. For kerning, you place your cursor in between where you want to increase or reduce the kerning, and then you come over. Now this over here, you can see this V/A here. If you hover over it, you see what it tells you. Let's do that. You can see it says set the kerning between two characters. Good. So let's come here, let's increase the kerning to 75. Can you see that the space in between has increased? So let's increase it to 200. Good. You can see the space in between also has increased, and that's just the space between R and N. Now let's reduce the space between E and R. That is, you reduce the kerning. So let's reduce the kerning there to, let's say, okay, sorry, this is font size. Let's reduce the kerning there to -25. Good. Let's reduce it some more to -100. Good. You could see that. Good. So let's reduce the kerning between E and R, between K and E. I want us to reduce the kerning here also to -25. Can you see that? It's almost fusing in with E. Let's reduce it to -75. Let's see. Let's make it -100. So you could see that the K and the E are already together, right? Now let's zoom out so you see the effect of kerning. Can you see that? So here we reduce the kerning here, but we increase the kerning here. Okay, between R and N we increase the kerning. Good, good. Now that is for kerning. Now let me show you the same thing if we're to deal with tracking. Okay, now this is for kerning. Let me type in tracking. Okay, let's type in tracking. Good. So this is tracking. For tracking, you're increasing the space between groups of characters. So as this tracking is here now, I'm trying to increase the space between each character uniformly. So what I do, I come over here, you can see this, right? If you hover over it, you see set the tracking for the selected character. So I come over here, I increase to say 75. You can see all the spaces are increasing accordingly. Can you see that? They are all if I change it now to say 400, you can see they are all increasing accordingly across groups of characters, right? Across groups of characters. Good. If I click in between the text and I try to increase the tracking, you can see that it has dimmed all the other available options. So that means there's no way I can increase tracking just between text, right? Just between two characters. You can't increase the tracking between two characters. Tracking has to do with a group of characters, right? While kerning, it has to do with um individual characters. Now let's try to increase the kerning here, right? Between a group of, this is a group of characters. Let's try to increase the kerning without clicking in between. You can see we can't, all the options are dimmed in, we cannot increase the kerning. Good. So that's the difference between kerning and tracking. A lot of designers always have that question, what's the difference between kerning and tracking? But that's the difference between kerning and tracking. While for leading, now for leading, I want us to, let's close the visibility of this layer. So let me show you what leading is, right? So now I want us to make a sentence here, right? Let's type in let's type in, okay, let's reduce the size to say 18. Good. Let's reduce the tracking. Remember we said tracking to 400. Let's reduce to 0. Good. So now let's type kenning is the space between two characters. Okay. While leading is the space between two lines of text, and tracking is the space between groups of characters. Good. So now that we have typed this, I want to show you leading, right? So let's, I want to zoom in a little. Okay. I want to show you leading. Okay, good. So we'll come over here to your character panel. You see leading, you can see this here that shows A over A, right? If you hover over it to tell you set the leading, right? So you come here, let's increase the leading to say 30. Can you see the space between the lines of text have increased? If you increase the leading to 72, it has further increased. If you reduce the leading to 6, you can see what it is, right? Basically just clumping up together. Or 9, you can see what it is. Or you could just leave it on automatic, so you just set the leading right to the default, right? Now, how is kerning, leading and tracking important? Now, in design, your text has to be readable and legible. Okay, when the some text may not appear legible, or it will be difficult to read them, except you tweak these characters, except you tweak them, either they are kerning, they are leading, or they are tracking. For instance, if the leading of this text was a lot smaller, like 10, okay, or let's say 12, it will be a lot difficult to read it than when the leading is on auto, or let's just say 18. Right now it's easier to read. Okay, now let's reduce the tracking of this text. Let's reduce the tracking to say 25. Right, okay, no, I need some great difference, so let's reduce it to 100. You could see it's looking a little bit clumped up, but if we increase it to say 100, you can see that. Let me reduce the font size also, so you'd see the effect better. Right, you could see how increasing the tracking has made it a lot more legible, right? While if you put it on 0, it's not as easy to read as, say, when it was like 70, when it was like 50. Okay, so now I'm not saying you should always tweak the kerning, leading, or tracking. I'm just saying that it is case specific when you need to. Just know when you need to, and you can use this to make your text more readable, or to make your text legible. Okay, good. That's all about kerning, leading, and tracking. Now, in the next video, I'm going to tell you tips on font usage. Right? So stay with me in the next video as I show you tips on font usage.